Everyone. Today you've heard a lot of information about the SBIR and STTR programs, and hopefully you have had the chance to talk to some of our agency representatives. These programs are a great way to prove your innovative idea is feasible by approaching a critical problem and demonstrating it is solvable. Just like with many things in life, though, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Reviewers will want to see that there have been some groundwork laid and that you have a clear pathway and idea and know there is some scientific backing to your innovation. What is a great way to showcase that there are some ground truths there? That there are outside experts that believe in what you are doing and that it will work? How do you gain some key credibility in the eyes of the reviewer? Well, teaming and partnering are excellent vehicles to demonstrate this. It shows that others think there might be something there and potential experts are willing to work on the idea with you, that people are excited about the future your innovation might bring about. In our next panel, we will discuss the importance of teaming and partnering and some things to be aware of when starting that journey. I would now like to welcome our moderator, Cliff Hudson, CEO of Emerging Technology Ventures, to the stage. As the CEO of Emerging Technology Ventures, Mr. Eugene Cliff Hudson brings to the company more than 32 years of experience from the DoD in acquisition management, project management, and technology transition. In addition to his experience in unmanned systems development, Mr. Hudson has held various government business management positions within the U.S. Army Aviation and Missile Command Acquisition Center. He will be joined by our panelists, Dr. Luis Cifuentes, Eric Prosnitz, Carol Rabke, and Sean Ross. Cliff, the floor is now yours.
Okay, thank you, Garrett, and welcome to all of our panelists today too, and to our attendees as well. This is, as a small business, this is such an important panel for me personally, because when you're putting a strong proposal together, as Garrett mentioned, the team is going to be scored by the evaluators, and having that team fully rounded out is so important. That ground truth, but also critical voids that you may have from a technical standpoint as well. So we look forward to working today with our panel and discussing it from several perspectives. We have a SBIR STTR program office manager with us today, a technical user from the Air Force side, and we also have two academic representatives as well that have the potential for representing a strong team member depending on the proposal that you're putting together. I'd like to kind of go around the horn first for each panelist to introduce themselves, and then also share a little bit about your role in the innovation ecosystem. We know the SBIR STTR program is such a critical aspect of it, and we'd like to learn a little bit more from your perspective of your organization. So I'm just going to go around the horn here, my screen here. Luis, could we start with you?
Well, thank you, Cliff. Luis Cifuentes. My title is Vice President for Research, Creativity, and Strategic Initiatives here in New Mexico State University, which is in Las Cruces, New Mexico, on the southern part of the state. Just a little bit about myself. I love to tell people this. I'm an oceanographer by training, so I usually end up explaining why I am now in New Mexico. And while I was there, I was very much involved with the Ocean Drilling Project, a project that created a lot of technology, which ultimately became commercializable. Cliff, I just heard you're involved in UAS. I'm proud that when I was at A&M Corpus Christi, I was the lead on bringing one of the UAS test sites to Texas. So I learned quite a bit about that technology. Well, obviously, universities are core centers of creation of new knowledge and intellectual property. And to that extent, key element of the innovation ecosphere. But I think it's important to note too, and I'll keep this short, that one of the things we do for the innovation ecosystem is we help train and educate the talent. And without the talent, some of which eventually become faculty, this is a difficult proposition to make work. So Welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time for joining us today. If I could move to Eric.
Hi, Cliff. Thank you for having me today. My name is Eric Prosnitz. I'm a professor of internal medicine at the University of New Mexico Health Science Center here in Albuquerque, about 3 hours north of New Mexico State. And my background really in this area, I would say, comes as a faculty member whose work over about the last 15, almost 20 years has sort of just carried me into the world of commercialization and translation of basic research in the health arena, and other activities over time now, leading a team science and commercialization component of our clinical and translational science center, being the UNMPI for an IDEA program initiative, actually two, one that ended this summer, which was to create hubs for IDEA regions in the country to help promote entrepreneurship and commercialization within IDEA states, and a second initiative now to develop an educational product to help assist in that direction. And I serve on our board for our University Tech Transfer Office, Rainforest Innovations here. So I've moved into multiple areas and seen some of these interactions from different aspects, and happy to be here.
Thank you, Eric. Carol, welcome.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here also. My name is Carol Rabke, and I am with the DOE Office of SBIR and STTR programs. I joined the DOE team in July of 2021, and I was hired in a new role within the office. I was hired as their first tech to market advisor after working more than 20 plus years in the SBIR and STTR community as a commercialization service provider. So in that position, I managed phase one commercialization programs for both NSF and DOE. And so I have worked with hundreds of small businesses, and I've had insight into thousands of them. So within the DOE program office, I focus on providing partnership opportunities for the DOE applicants and awardees. Because I will just say that, SBIR and STTR funding is fantastic, but it won't be enough. And it's important to recognize at the outset that commercialization is a statutory goal. It's a congressional objective. And so you are going to need to find more funding if you're using SBIR funding, and that's probably going to cause you to need to team and look outside of the realm that the SBIR and STTR programs can provide. So in focusing on partnering within DOE, I am developing an SBIR partnering platform. It should be done by July of 2023. And the idea there is that you as innovators can come in and using AI, find the partners that you need. And then we also have some new programs for our DOE Phase 2 awardees that are quarterly workshops that are focused on typical areas of weakness. They launched last week. And then we're going to be doing some strategic partner introduction pitch sessions that are going to launch in 2023, because it's all about helping people find the right partners from when they first enter and they need the subject matter experts all the way to getting out to phase 3, where they might need manufacturing or additional funding or engineering design, all types of different partners.
Well, thank you. That's excellent. It's great news about the platform. I'm excited to explore that. And you're so right there. Phase 1 is a start, but you really have to take that long view, and having those resources available so that you can put that program plan together for success is so important. So thank you so much. Sean, welcome.
Hi, Dr. Sean Ross. So I'm a long-term researcher. I've been active duty Air Force and Navy, and then for about the past 20 years, I've worked for the Air Force Research Laboratory directed energy director. That means I make or research components of laser weapons. Just recently, a month ago, I transitioned to Air Force Cycle Management Center as the lead program manager for directed energy prototyping. Now, in a military context, prototyping doesn't mean any old prototype. It is prototype systems. So these are full laser weapon and microwave weapon systems that I'm interested in now. But over the course of my career, I'm trying to think. I've probably written 15 SBIR topics. I can't know how many evaluation committees. I've taken several. I'm thinking 3 or 4 all the way through to phase 3. Over the course of the career, I have seen many bad proposals. And part of what I'll mention today in my comments is how to make great proposals. And frankly, the teaming aspect is probably the most important aspect. And I'd really like to foot stomp what Carol just said about this having, either funding or team partnerships. Often the difference, we may get 35, 40 proposals for a call, and I have a day to get through all these things. So I'm given 6 minutes per proposal, and I'm ripping through these things. And what will often distinguish the winning proposal over the other one is that teaming relationship, that you've got an interested customer, some outside funding, something like that. It really makes your proposal pop. Over.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. And that's excellent. Yes, I used to be on the other side working with the Marine Corps and Navy, and you're correct. We had a stack of proposals, and you had to go through those so quickly. And so it's important. Lesson learned is that don't waste your time. Get the compelling parts out there to the reviewer. And one of the we kind of had the 1/3, and team members were one third of it. So it is so important in that evaluation cycle. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is kind of move to the elevator pitch. We've heard of the audience has heard a little bit about your organization, but what is the one critical takeaway that you'd like to leave with the small business community of why working with your organization is important? And I know we've got a very diverse organization, so your answers are probably going to be a little bit different, but I think they're important to the community. And I'm going to go reverse order here if I can. And Sean, if I could tap you again, and we'll go reverse order.
Okay, so I'm going to respond for 2 different organizations. First off will be the directed energy directorate that I've worked for, 20 plus years, and then my new organization, Lifecycle Management Center. So let's start with the Air Force Research Laboratory. They are and I'm going to use DoD terminology, they are a 6.2 and a 6.3 funded organization. That means they're dealing with early technology development, leading to technology feasibility demonstrations, in some cases of complete systems. So the big partnership that you get with an organization like that is you have experts in their field that can provide ideas. I'm in the PM meetings, you're not getting a PM that is just, that's their administrative job. You're getting a technical expert, and they can review your technical approach. They can provide insight, and they can really sharpen up. They can hook you up with the best experts in the field. So it can be quite a partnership. Now, in the more system prototyping, my current organization is a 6.4 funded organization, and at the SBIR level, you're probably not going to be making full systems that I will buy, but I am going to have key technology inserts that you can make a product that will fit into my existing system. And if you do, you have a ready-made market, because I'm dealing with things that are already in low rate initial production. We're moving into what's official programs of record. So the partnership you want with a prototyping organization is that you have a market right there. So that's kind of the 2 advantages there. Over.
Okay, thank you, Sean. And those are 2 very important reasons for that partnership. Carol, if I could move to you. And Sean, you're breaking up a little bit on the audio side. Dell, I don't know if you guys can check that on your side.
Okay, so I would just say that the important things to know about DOE. DOE releases topics twice a year, July and November. My colleague Eileen Chance spoke about our programs during the agency rapid fire pitches, and there is a DOE booth in the expo area, so you can find lots of information out there. But what I want to make sure you understand is that DOE funds many different topics. Everyone thinks of us as just energy topics, but that's not everything we have. We have 13 DOE program offices that participate, and all of the topics align with the DOE mission. So, leadership in clean energy, leadership in basic energy and engineering sciences, and enhancement of nuclear security. But what that means is translates into many different topics that are not just energy. We have topics which most people don't know on high performance computing and networking. We do a lot with quantum information systems. We work on genomic science and related biotechnologies. So there's just a lot of different places that you can become involved and topics that you might not necessarily think about DOE funding. And then the one other ground truth that I need to make sure that you're aware of is that letters of intent are required to submit an application. So that's really important. If you don't get that in, you're not going to be able to submit. So make sure that you take that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Before you move on to our next panelist, Sean, it looks like your connection strength is really low. You might try refreshing and coming back in. That might fix the robo voice. Sorry, Cliff.
No, thanks, Dale. I wasn't sure if it was on my side or it was on Sean's side. So thanks for checking that. Okay, Eric, if we could move to you.
Sure, absolutely. So again, along with Luis, I mean, I'm here at a university, so we have an extremely diverse array of researchers in varying fields. Here at the Health Science Center, of course, we have hundreds and hundreds of clinicians and PhD researchers that can assist, in health-related aspects of SBIRs and STTRs through, subawards, for example. And of course, on main campus, what we call our main campus here, we have a very large School of Engineering. I'd say on both sides, we're quite familiar with the SBIR, STTR programs. In many cases, they originate out of our researchers, our faculty's own discoveries and technologies that get patented through our tech transfer office, and then small companies are spun out. But sometimes they're licensed to larger companies, and those companies then want to come back and engage, the expert or the inventor or the innovator, in some way to help move the product forward in such an award. So, being a relatively large university, we just have an extremely diverse array of experts here that can really help, a company almost of any size move a technology forward.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Luis?
Adding a little bit to what Eric talked about, we often have underutilized IP, and that's always needs to be a consideration for folks. Many opportunities to build out of that. But the talent is not just those with experience and tremendous research capabilities, but it's also our students that are moving up the line, graduate students and undergraduates, some of which can become part of these efforts and ultimately may become an employee to the new company. I think in addition to that, each one of our universities has services, research services, laboratories, et cetera, that can be of use to an SBIR. And there are even times when the university will support the effort in various ways, including the support perhaps of a graduate student who's getting an experience at the entity that is running the SBIR. And also I'll talk a little bit more when I get to Arrowhead. We can assist with the application for those entities that don't necessarily have the wherewithal to do that. So I mean, I think the university has a lot of different facets. UNM, NMSU, any university that's a research university that can be very, very valuable to the SBIR applicant.
Okay, thank you, Luis. And if I can add just very quickly from our perspective as a small business, and I'm going to highlight NMSU. We all know the great work that Dana and Dell and the team there does at the Arrowhead Center, but our relationship with the School of Engineering has been outstanding. Just to pick up on some of your comments, our interns that we're able to hire from there, and permanent employees as well, has been so important for us. And so that partnership is vital for us, and not only in putting a proposal together, but actually in executing the work as well. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to flip it just a little bit now. You've talked about, why it's important for the small business community, but what do you as an organization gain from that internally as well? If you can just take it from a little different perspective now. And Eric, if we can start with you this time.
Sure. Being an academic enterprise, I would say we have spent, along with our tech transfer office, Rainforest Innovations, a good part of I've been here for 25 years. When I got here, the idea of, quote, inventing or innovating for commercial purposes was still not that strong an initiative here. I would say over the last 20 years, and probably as of about, I would say maybe 10 or a little more years ago, I think it's now on people's radar. Not everyone though, so we still have to do quite a bit of educating here of faculty, and we have to reach down, of course, to trainees and students too, about the role that ultimately commercialization plays in bringing your science to either the clinic or the public, or again, we're at a health science center, so it's often ultimately the patient. And it's important because, again, somewhat more historically, but there was always a large sort of fraction of the research population, especially universities, that said, well, I'm just going to publish my work. I don't want to get involved with that business stuff. That's not what I'm here to do, right? I'm here just to do science and publish my work. But it's important, to educate at all levels, that in pretty much all cases, or at least in most cases, unless there's intellectual property tied to these discoveries, inventions, innovations, that allows then a company to develop it and hold that IP and invest in it further, because it's never ready or rarely ready for prime time. When you publish something as a paper, that it still needs that investment, and unless there's IP associated with it that the company can have their investments protected, then it's unlikely actually to get to the public in a usable form. And so, what I find here, and I have young faculty, regularly come to me, and again, faculty generally aren't necessarily interested in listening too much about this until they're ready to listen to it, right? So it's one thing to say, hey, this is important, but and what I try and tell them is, just keep it in mind, when you have something, when you're getting ready to publish something, you think this is really impactful or can have an impact on health in some way, step back or come talk to me again or talk to someone else, and reach out or talk to our tech transfer office folks, right, and just reach out to them. And that's what they do then. And all of a sudden they'll, knock on my door, make an appointment, come see me. We talk sort of through it because then they're ready to listen about the process and what it might take. And, I have to do an invention disclosure. Yeah, I sort of remember you told me about that 2 years ago. But, it wasn't important to them then, right? So anyways, I mean, those are the sorts of things we find that are challenging, I think, in this academic environment. And it's been something that the needle has been moving across the country, I think, in academics, again, to a large extent over the last 20, 25, 30 years, depending on the institution. So
Yeah.
there.
Thank you so much. Carol, if we could move to you.
Right. So I think my answer is going to be a little bit different because by definition, since I'm in the Small Business Innovation Research and STTR Programs Office, we exist to fund small businesses. So that is why we are interested in building relationships with the small business community. We want to fund them to develop innovative cutting edge technologies to keep America at the forefront of scientific discovery, and quite frankly, we wouldn't exist without them. So we work really hard. We do a lot of outreach to small businesses. We're trying to diversify the small businesses that we're working with, and we are always eager to get new small businesses into the SBIR and STTR programs. And so along that line, we want them to be successful when they first submit their first application to DOE. And so we have programs for them. We have a phase 0 program. I know some folks mentioned those already today, but DOE has one of those. So if you've never submitted, we would like small businesses to give it a try. Look at the different topic areas we have. We have topics out on the street right now. They were just released at the beginning of November. And we also provide support all the way along. So we have the technical and business assistance support. So that's 6,500 in phase 1 and 50,000 in phase 2. And that is all for helping to commercialize. So really trying to help that small business succeed. And then we also have a customer discovery program, the Energy I-Core program. So I would just say we spend a lot of time doing outreach to small businesses, and we exist because of small businesses. So we need you to have a relationship with us.
Okay, thank you. Sean, if we could touch on you very, very quickly.
Sure. Can you hear me?
It's still a little warbly.
Well, let me try. Yeah, I've still got all the echo cancellation on. That's what else I can do.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm going to answer the question with a story, a success story. So at once upon a time, one of my technical niches was power and thermal management for laser weapon systems. And so a colleague had gone down to I think it was an industry day, something like that, out at New Mexico State University. And he got back and he said, "Sean, you have to go see this guy." Okay, so I took a day and hopped on my motorcycle and sped way too fast down the freeway from Albuquerque down to Cruces. And I met this professor. I'm going to leave names out of it. And he had an enhancement to a boiling process that made it way, way, way better. And it was cheap. And I walked into his lab and I said, "Wow, this is amazing. Have you protected your intellectual property?" He'd never even thought of it. So we shepherded him through the NMSU office, got the intellectual property. He never actually applied for a phase 1 proposal. But at that time, I already had phase 1s going into phase 2 for some laser diodes that needed his technology. So I introduced him to my phase 2 proposers, got him as a subcontractor under 2 phase 2 proposals. So within the course of a year, his research budget went from $5,000 a year to like $60,000 a year. That was a big deal. That was that's small potatoes for me. Went way up for him. It was enough to have him be able to apply for tenure. because he had to show some funding to get tenure. So he was able to get tenure, and then we took that phase two, which was a group up in Denver, and I connected them with the commercial laser diode manufacturer. So his technology is now embedded in commercial products that I can buy as a military customer that are going into these laser weapon systems. So the lesson learned from a researcher point of view is doing those industry days, going to technical conferences, getting who you are out there is very, very important. In case the guy he actually talked to was a coworker of mine. Okay. And so also you can have success in the cyber world as a subcontractor, right? You know, somebody else that's doing all those kind of proposals. Maybe you're not working at the widget level. Maybe you're working at a technology insert level. That's great. Okay, and if you have it with the right people, maybe you're going to back all the way to phase three on somebody else's proposal, which again is just fine. I had over.
Okay, thank you, and excellent. And you copied well. A little distortion, but everyone took away the important point that you were making there. Luis, if we could touch you now.
And just to follow up on what's been said, from our perspective at New Mexico State University, we're a land grant. Our mission is to teach, conduct research, and do service and outreach. And the audience for teaching and service and outreach is pretty obvious. And to kind of borrow on that famous Bishop Barclay question about whether if you're in the woods and you yell and nobody hears you, did you really yell? I explain to my faculty, if you create something in the laboratory or some new knowledge and nobody does anything with it, does the taxpayer care? And so you ask, why do we need to get with small business? Small business is the huge stakeholder for all this, and it's what allows us to create added value to what we do in the research environment. And I think one of the great things that the SBIR, STTR has done, and I've seen this happening through my career, I started in the late 80s, is really created the opportunities for faculty to get outside what is called the ivory tower and really make the impact that we need to make to have the taxpayers recognize our value.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Thank you for that, and I think you really resonated and brought everything together there. And I think what came across in the last two questions and discussion is it's win-win. It's not just a small business, but it's that partnership. It goes both ways, and it really came through in your answers there. One of the challenges I have is breaking into an organization. So what I'd like to pose now to each of the panelists is avenues of approach. What are the most effective avenues of approach for a small business that wants to engage your organization? Carol, could we start with you first?
Yeah, that would be great. So, well, first, I think I put it in the chat, and hopefully it made its way out to the group chat, and that is the partnering resources that we have. And so I exist in the programs office to help you find the partners. So if you are a phase zero, so you're just an applicant working on your first one, maybe you're looking for subject matter experts at universities, for example. I'm here to help you with that. Eventually, the SBIR partnering platform I mentioned will be there to help you use AI to find each other. But until then, I do have engineering resources. I have test and certification resources. I have commercialization services resources all posted on our site. And then I also have a partnering blog where I talk about different partners that I have helped companies find. So there's lots of partnering resources there. I also wanted to mention the labpartnering.org site. That is the National Labs partnering website. So if you're looking for subject matter experts, that's a great place to go and look for them. The other place to think about partnering resources are the American Made Challenges. That is a program that is run out of NREL by EERE. And so you can find a lot of partners and a lot of smaller funding than SBIR and STTR funding, but you can find some prizes there. And just a couple other DOE programs outside of SBIR that you should be aware of in terms of resources. The newly introduced Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and also the Loan Office. Let's see, also the Lab Embedded Entrepreneur Program. So that is where if you are a grad student, let's say you just came out of getting your degree, or maybe you are a professor who is going on sabbatical, maybe you would want to embed yourself within a national lab and work on the technology that you're trying to move out into the private sector. So there's a lot of different programs outside of SBIR that I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of within DOE. And I have all those links and I'll drop them into the chat.
Thank you so much. Eric?
Sure. I mean, here at the University of New Mexico, I think there are a couple main routes to engage and try and find the right people. One would be through our tech transfer office here, Rainforest Innovations. They are very knowledgeable, certainly about individuals and sort of in all areas on campus. The two larger ones being, again, the broader engineering focus, including computer science and similar things, and then the health science side of things. So they know quite well individuals that have an entrepreneurial interest and might be interested in working with a company, for example. And then, of course, chairs of departments or deans of schools, dean of engineering, or the vice president of research here at the HSC, or the HSC myself, for example. I'm fairly familiar with what most of the faculty are doing and can certainly point people in the right direction if a company is interested in finding some expertise in a certain area here at the university.
Okay, thank you very much. Luis?
Well, Eric mentioned tech transfer centers. Cliff, you mentioned Arrowhead. Arrowhead is a tremendous resource in the state, certainly down here in the southern part of the state. And one of the things that makes universities a little difficult to work with, we talk about the fact that we have IP, we have talent, we have services, we have entities that can help with applications, but they're all over the place. And it's not like you can go on the web and Google something and have direct access to all of this. I think one of the things Arrowhead does really well is allows for a person to go to Arrowhead and go straight to which of those resources they need to access. I think the other thing we all have now, which we didn't have before, is wonderful software that makes it possible for us to create teams. We just got on Streamline as an ERA, an Electronic Research Administration System, and they have a platform that allows you to map faculty to a given area of research. So if there was somebody who has an SBIR with identify a certain gap, they need an academician in a certain area, they could contact my office, give us a couple keywords, the general gist of what the program is going to be. We can go into the software and find the best matches for that. So the university is not an easy place to navigate if you've never been in it. At least at NMSU, and the same thing at UNM. If you go to Arrowhead or if you come to my office, we can help you navigate that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do want to again endorse the Arrowhead Center. It's been a great gateway for us into the NMSU system. Sean, could we just test your sound here and audio?
Yeah. Am I here?
Oh, perfect. You're great.
Hear me?
Outstanding.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
now okay.
All right. Unfortunately, in the defense, we don't even have phone books. The only way to navigate through the government, from my point of view, know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. The old-fashioned in-person networking is of vital importance to get in. And in my particular field, it's through a professional society. So, an energy professional society, but any of those important. Send somebody from your team out to the whatever the appropriate professional society is, meet the people, press the flesh, distribute the video, the business cards, hand out the little poofy ball, whatever it is that you do, because once you somebody interested inside the government, like they will shepherd you through the process.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And you know that that honesty, then that's you know that is that's one of the challenges I have with teams and some of the other things. Sitting across from a person and getting to know them, that there's a lot of things that just come across in that person-to-person meeting, and so that's very relevant. We're getting towards the end of our time, and what I'd like to do is go to the good, the bad, and the ugly real quick. If you could share a war story, and I know Sean will. I think you've shared some things, so we'll give you that passage on this particular question. But maybe you've had a teaming relationship. What were some of the red flags that that told you, hey, we're about to go south? And just for lessons learned for our attendees, what to watch for. Eric, I know you've got to leave at 1400, so if I could turn to you first.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll speak. I think from maybe the academic and faculty perspective, which you know we have interest levels that range far and wide. We have some faculty that really want to get involved, you know, with moving their technology forward, and we have others that, you know, with a little encouragement, they'll submit an invention disclosure and get the technology protected, but sort of say, well, you know, tech transfer office, I'll leave it to you to do something with it. I want to get back to my research. And we have this wide range, I think, and so from those that want to be engaged, I think what often they find a little disappointing is that, and this isn't universal at all, but I've seen this happen many times, is that once the company licenses something, you know, a technology, or essentially patent at that point, then through our tech transfer office, the researcher often they still feel very connected to that research, but the company just takes off and runs with it, basically, and because they now own it, right? They own the technology, they've licensed it. And very often the researcher then, you know, really has no say. They don't necessarily, sometimes they really want to engage because that's an expert in the field. Other times they're like, thank you, and we're off and running with it. We're going to do our own thing with it. And in that case, I know faculty often feel somewhat sort of left in the dust behind. And so, you know, I always try and make that clear when I talk to folks that the level of engagement can vary. You know, I think if you approach a company and say you have something more to contribute or you'd like to, that they are perhaps open to keeping channels open, but it won't always happen. So,
okay, thank you. Luis, if we can move to you again from an academic perspective, since
I don't have a horror story, but I'm going to relate something that I think all of you probably know, and that is that sometimes processes, approvals, etc., at the university move on geological timescales. And I say that because I think particularly those that are going to the university looking to fill a gap or on an STTR, you know, that partnership is required, start early, particularly when it comes to creating the MOUs and the agreements that need to be outlined, because Otherwise, what you're going to end up doing is through Arrowhead, you're going to come to my office and ask me to help make something go through at a faster pace than it should. And yes, I have, I can do that, but I don't want to be doing that all the time. So I think it's important to start early, and it's also important to know that the faculty culture is not one that necessarily understands the timeline of business. And so managing those two different cultures is really important.
Very important. Thank you for that. Carol, if we turn to you.
Right. So I echo what you just said as well. Timing to really make sure that you start early, particularly if you're working with a university. And that was where I was going to say one of my horror stories has come in, and that was just that the small business didn't work out an agreement with the university ahead of time. And so that's a big red flag for me when I am looking at applications or looking at commercialization plans is ownership of the IP, especially if it is an STTR. Just really making sure that there's an agreement in place at the outset. And then the other piece that I see where things break down, and that is just making sure that everyone understands each other's expectations for the relationship at the outset. So, and that goes along to universities maybe working on a different timeline than a small business who's really trying to get things going really quickly. So that's something to manage those expectations, but also to do your homework before putting a formal agreement in place. If you're a small business and you're looking at doing a partnership, really think of this like a marriage. Can you work with them? Do they care about your opinion? What do other small businesses say about working with them? And are you okay with the milestones and financial arrangements? So you really need to look at the relationship you're walking into.
That's really an excellent point too, and the proposal cycles are, and you hit on an excellent, and I think everyone has in their comments. The proposal cycles are so short. You need to really have that strategic vision and beginning to cultivate those strategic relationships that you have the front end work already done, so you can exercise it when those proposal opportunities become available. That's what we learned the hard way, and we've embedded that in our culture as a small business. Sean, I didn't want to exclude you from this particular question. I wanted to give you a chance if you had anything else to add in that.
Well, I do, and I don't want to disparage anybody here, but I found in practice that if what I need is an answer or a method, wow, universities are absolutely the way to go. But if what I need is a product, they can be a little risky. I have had multiple projects in which, because think about it, you go to the university and they've got, optical fiber drawing tower, great. And they've got a graduate student who's enthusiastic. And then right in the middle of your project, the graduate student has something else to do, gets sidetracked, had to go home, missed a semester, and they were one deep. So you got to think about your partnering things and what it is that you need from the various partners, and make sure that if you're under a timeline, is this somebody that can deliver on that timeline that you want?
Excellent point, and that's well made. And okay, I think we're ready to move to the question and answer period. Dell, are you on the line to handle that transition?
Getting things set up.
Okay. While we're waiting,
Cliff, if I could respond to Sean, I feel your pain, sir, and I would like to tell you that one of the things we're doing at New Mexico State is, in fact, led by the chancellor, a task force looking at how to create a culture of project management at the university, so that if you have a product, you are a deliverable, that it actually be met, and that it address the risks of having a one deep bench and things like that. So I'm not going to suggest that we're going to have this solved tomorrow, but we recognize the issue and we are working towards a solution.
Outstanding.
Nice to hear. Thank you.
While Dell's doing the tech transfer there in another manner, I really want to thank all of our panel members and Eric as well, who had another engagement at the top of the hour and had to depart. But Dell, if you're ready, we'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I am. So a lot of the questions that are being asked, I think everybody did a really good job of responding to. There is one question that I think would be worth diving into a little bit more, particularly from kind of the business standpoint, is how can people sell their idea to potential team members or partners? And, what is that kind of benefit that this was covered slightly, but I think along the lines of a company being able to sell their idea to, hey, partner with me, hey, team with me. For each of you, what is a best way for a company to kind of go about that process?
Okay. Luis, would you like to start that process?
Well, from the university perspective, a company needs to understand what the university's mission is, what the potential partner, perhaps a faculty member or a staff scientist, what their metrics of evaluation are, and they are different from the business itself. We need to publish. We need to get recognition for the work that we do. We need to move forward on the tenure and promotion track. So I think it is important when you are trying to sell an idea to do your homework first. Talk to Arrowhead, maybe contact me if you'd like. Get a sense of what the departmental culture is, because sometimes the pitch is going to be different depending on who and what part of the university you're dealing with. So I'd love to be able to give you one specific answer. Like I said, university highly distributed, very different areas. Do your homework first, find the right people to ask the right questions, and then perhaps frame your pitch differently depending on who you're going after.
Okay. Thank you. Sean?
So,
I think we lost you, Sean. Okay. Carol, if we could divert you.
Right. Right. So I will just say that the way to pitch your idea to DOE, SBIR, and STTR is to actually find a topic that you can apply to. But in general, there are many platforms out there where you can find opportunities to pitch. I know NREL has their industry growth forum. I believe that Los Alamos also has a program that they do where you can come in and pitch. A lot of the national labs have industry days. I know DOD did industry days. But that would be really how you could go about pitching your ideas to different partners. And that is one of the things that we are adding within the DOE, SBIR, and STTR program office are the ability to have strategic partner introduction sessions. So we're going to be working with our phase 2 awardees to prepare them to pitch. Yes, unfortunately, the only way you can pitch an idea to me is to put it in an application. But other than that, I am going to be trying to help the small businesses learn how to pitch.
Excellent. And your phase zero program is so important as well. And so you're building a great tool set for the small business community. Sean, if we can see if we can reconnect with you.
Okay, how's the audio? How's the audio?
Audio's great. You're frozen video wise.
Okay. Okay. So first, inside of a proposal, never, ever, ever repeat the topic call. I wrote it. So what you need to do, every proposal starts with a diagram and a brief description. Because I am ripping through the proposals so quickly, I needed to be able to quickly determine whether it meets the criteria and I want to read more. So that's within a proposal. Next, I call this interface-centric thinking. So what you want to do is, by your dialogue with your potential customer, you want to understand, and we use the tools of a system block diagram or a functional flow block diagram, figure out where your thing fits in your potential customer's overall system. Then look at the little lines. I've got a power, I got a thermal, I've got information, I got whatever interfaces I have, and then understand how you're going to meet your customer's basic concerns about the environment your thing is going to go into. Once you understand that, you'll know what their big concerns are, and then you can pitch that. Hey, yeah, it's going to work here. It's going to meet this size need. It's going to meet this energy need. It's going to meet this efficiency need, whatever it is. So I would recommend those. So those two things go a long way into understanding. You know, like if you're trying to say in my business, a lot of times a small company will want a team with a big prime, you know, Lockheed Martin, right? And then they're going to get this letter in their proposal that says, Lockheed says, yeah, we like this thing. Okay, the way you're going to get it from Lockheed first is you're going to get somebody like me to make the introduction. But then when you go there and do it, if you understand, you know, what system it is that Lockheed is going into, what those interface requirements are, at the SBIR level, they're not exact numbers. It's more general considerations. But understand those things, and then you're going to be able to make your pitch very well. Over.
Thank you, Sean. So important. That's an important comment. We live in a systems world, and if you've got the best technology by itself, but you got to think about where's it going and where it's going to reside and perform. So that's an excellent point. Del, any other things in our chat?
No, I think that is going to end us for our Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and turn it back to Garrett.
Del, before you leave, if I could just take it for 1 minute. As everyone has heard today, Del is going to be leaving us, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, get me a little teary-eyed because I've known Del for so long. But I want to thank you for everything, and all the best to you in future endeavors. And we look forward to re-engaging in whatever your next great project is. But thank you.
I appreciate that, Cliff. Thank you very much, sir. All right, and Garrett.
Well enough to know that he doesn't want me to also say something, but I also like him enough to say that I'm going to miss him as well. Anyways, thank you to our wonderful panel there, highlighting why teaming and partnering are important for not only your proposal, but also for the future health of your business. Now, we are going to bring you all something a little bit different. We are about to discuss the differences between grants and contracts. Unlike our panel so far, where there were a lot of nuances, grants versus contracts is kind of an A-B type problem. Either an agency funds through granting mechanisms, through contracts, or sometimes a combination of the two. Rather than hear why an agency does one or the other, it's usually because of legislation, to be blunt, or what a grant or a contract means, we are going to hear from several of the SBIR and STTR agencies on some of the key things that are different between grants and contracts, why those differences are important to understand, and how they can potentially impact your award. To lead this roundtable, we have called on the talents of Stephen Hogan, advisor and VA verification counselor with the New Mexico Procurement Technical Assistance Center. Steve provides government contracting assistance to small businesses throughout the state of New Mexico with over 40 years of experience in both military and civilian positions. Steve is a retired USAF colonel, having served 30 years, both active and reserve. And also, before we begin, I just want to remind our panelists to please turn off your microphones unless you are actively speaking. There's a little microphone icon you can toggle on and off. It helps with echo from your speakers. But let's move forward. Steve, I will now turn the floor to you to lead our discussion.
Thank you, Garrett. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate that introduction. And before we get started, I just want to touch on one thing real quickly. You may or may not be wondering why PTAC is involved in this and what our role is. And I was not able to sit in on all the sessions up to this point today, but I just wanted to point out that we are here to help, especially those who are new to the SBIR, STTR programs. We are here to help you with the preparation. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the echo here.
Cancellation, that should actually remove any echo you might be getting in
Yeah,
your
I'm not seeing that.
there.
Camera. Dell, can you help me with that? I'm still not seeing the icon for that.
Yes, Steve. So in the bottom of your screen, you should have a icon
We'll
that
press
looks
on.
like
I'll
a
try to
gear
just
that says settings.
ignore the echo. Yeah. Nonetheless, let me press on. So some of the things that we offer are assistance before you even get started with things like your SAM registration, helping companies get their UEI in place and their cage code, and then settings. I'm still trying to find the there.
Steve, are you
Sorry
listening
about that.
to the session in a different browser window? Because I just heard it and it's on a 30-second delay, and that would mean that you're actively watching it in a different window. Close that window.
I want to stress that this SAM registration can be timely and can be confusing to people and difficult. So don't wait on that to the very end, because it does take multiple weeks and times to actually get that done. Okay. Uh, I got you. So close the umbrella window.
Yes, Steve.
Is this better?
Yeah, you shouldn't hear an echo anymore.
Is this better, Dell?
Yep. Can you not
Okay.
hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Sorry, I had the stage turned off and I was still getting the echo. Nonetheless, I was talking about the SAM registration. Also, when people are preparing their solicitations, I'm sorry, their responses, their proposals, we can help you by working through the solicitation review, making sure you understand all the things that you're signing up to, the terms and conditions, the FAR references when they apply, and the supplements. We can help you with actually planning out your proposal and reviewing it, and also pricing. If you're not familiar with all the aspects of how to get your direct and indirect costs into the proposal. So that's just kind of a little background on what PTACs bring to the table when it comes to working with our clients. And we have many clients who are in fact involved in the SBIR programs. So moving forward, this is going to be a round robin type of panel. And we're going to go through our different panelists for each of several questions that I'm going to pose. But we're going to start off with just an introductory type question. And I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about your agency or the unit that you're assigned to. And what we'd like to know is whether or not you're a granting or a contracting agency, or if perhaps you might do both, and why that helps your particular agency complete their mission. So I'd like to start this first question off with Nicole from the Army.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. Hopefully you can hear me since I haven't been stopped. I'm assuming you can. But I work for the Army Applied Cyber Program, and we are a contracting agency. We do contracts for our award vehicle. And we find that probably the best use because of the type of awards that we do have, which are geared towards a specific end result versus with a grant, the specifications don't have to be there. Grants are also generally published without restrictions and that type of thing. And of course, with working with the Army Cyber Program, we have to have certain restrictions based on potential deliverables that we're looking for, anything that might be CUI related, or sometimes the end result of that project. So glad to be here today, and I'll send it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, I'd like to move to Ms. Tammy Neville from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Same question.
Thank you, Steve. As Steve said, my name is Tammy DeVille, and I am with the USDA SBIR and newly added for fiscal year 2023 STTR program as well. We are a granting agency, and the mission of our institute is to invest in and advance agricultural research, education, and extension to solve societal challenges. And by having a granting program, we feel we're able to best serve these needs by having 10 very broad topic areas that really complement the mission of our institute.
Thank you, Tammy. Let's move next to Brian with the U.S. Navy. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about your program and your organization?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Brian Shipley, Department of Navy. I'm the Commercialization Program Manager for the Navy. And much like the Army, we're mission oriented. So at the Navy, most of our research is concerned with the modernization, sustainment, and acquisition of everything our warfighters need. And because we're mission oriented, we issue contracts. Because in those contracts, much like Nicole at the Army, we're going to ask you to do something very specific for us. And that contract vehicle allows us to specify what we want you to work on and ultimately what you're going to be delivering through those contracts. The Navy primarily has been a very focused topic organization whereby we issue specific topics, probably the tune of about 150 topics a year, but they're always for very specific things because we're trying to fill capability gaps. In FY23, we will be issuing an open topic as well, and we can talk about that during our discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brian. Next, let's hear from Jolie from the Department of Homeland Security. Jolie? You're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So, hi, I'm Jolie Stepnowski from DHS, and I'm the operations manager. DHS is a contracting agency, much like the DoD. We are looking for specific technologies that go to specific end users. Those end users are in mind when we put out our topic solicitation. So that kind of having those specific things makes it necessary to have a contract because of the technologies that we're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. How about we move to Sarah from Air Force Research Lab? Same question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Tolano, and I am with the Air Force Research Lab. Actually, our lab supports both the Air Force and the Space Force. I'm actually a hybrid, so our office does grants, contracts, other transactions, CRADAs, EPAs. So we have a very diverse portfolio of program opportunities and contract opportunities. Because we are research and development focused, a lot of times we also do cooperative agreements. So our portfolio really ranges from very Air Force specific requirements, so that's where we have our contracts, to us having basic research topics out there, and those could be a grant or those could also be a cooperative agreement. We also have direct partnerships with universities. Those are through our EPAs, and I can provide information for that. We work a lot with small business companies. Sometimes they just want to use our lab for testing. So a lot of times we can sign what we call a corporate research and development agreement. So we're very fortunate to have a very large portfolio of opportunities that we can service small businesses, universities, and even large corporations that want to, do some research and development with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And let's not leave out Miss Genevieve Lind, our panelist from NOAA.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve. I'm the program manager for the Small Business Innovation Research Program at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Our mission at NOAA revolves around understanding, predicting, and preparing for changes in climate, weather, oceans, and coasts. In terms of funding mechanism, at NOAA, we switched from grants to contracts as our funding mechanism in 2019. And our goal with that was to move away from the perception that NOAA was going to be the customer of a given technology and the model that used the very focused and specific subtopics that represented NOAA-defined problems and solutions, and towards creating a space for innovators to bring us their good ideas to solve problems in the NOAA mission space in order to drive private sector innovation in key emerging technology areas that fall in the NOAA mission, including climate, weather, oceans, and coasts. I do want to take this opportunity to just also mention that we have an open solicitation right now. We only have one solicitation for phase 1 per year. So if you're interested, be sure to check out grants.gov to find our open phase 1 solicitation. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to take it to a different angle here. Let's look at the program from an application side. And I was wondering if you could perhaps share with our audience what is something that people should be aware of about your agency and how your program might change or differ, whether it be a grant or a contract. And I'd like to start this one off with Tammy from the Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Steve. As I mentioned in the introduction, I think that one of the things that people should know is that we have those 10 very broad topic areas. So even though you may not initially think that your innovation fits into agriculture, your research may fit because of one of these very broad topic areas. So that's, I think, where we're at with my thoughts with that.
Okay, thank you. Brian, would you like to add to that from your perspective?
Sure. I think that's a really important point that she brought up. I usually tell firms, while you think you know what swim lane you want to be in, I strongly encourage everyone to go to SBIR.gov and search the topics there, because what you might think you can do for Navy, you can probably also do at NASA and Army and Air Force. And maybe even NOAA, now that I'm hearing about NOAA, So I think it's important for firms to look broadly when they're looking for topics, even though they think they know what they want to do. When coming specifically to Navy, I think it's important for people to remember that Navy is one of the few components in DoD that accepts proposals from firms who are have majority ownership by venture capital, hedge fund, and operating companies. Not every component in DoD does that, and not every agency does that, but Navy is one that does. I think the other thing that is important for firms to know is that during our pre-release period, so at DoD, we have a 30-day pre-release and a 30-day open period. During pre-release, firms may make contact with the technical point of contact associated with the topic. And I strongly encourage firms to use that time to ask the topic author technical questions and kind of fine-tune their approach and really understand from the topic author what they're looking for. Our proposal template at Navy is only 10 pages, which is also unlike many of the components in DoD. Many of them have 20-page proposals. Ours is only 10, so you need to get to the point, make it well, and be done in 10 pages. Evaluation criteria, I think for all of us is about the same: technical merits, personnel, and commercialization potential. But at a contracting agency like Navy, that's particularly important because when we address or evaluate for technical merit, we're looking for you to specify in your statement of work what you're going to be doing, the tasks, the events, the major milestones that you're going to be performing in your phase one. If it's a direct to phase two topic, same thing. And for personnel, we want to know who you're going to bid and why you think that they have the expertise to carry out the research. And then if you're given an award, that contract is then going to require you to perform what you proposed in your statement of work. So be careful and be accurate on what you say you're going to do, because at Navy, we incorporate your proposal in your phase one and phase two contracts, and you're held to that letter. And those deliverables you said in your proposal that you were going to make, those are going to be in your contracts with us.
Thank you, Brian. Those are some very important points that we often find ourselves having to remind our clients about. Sometimes we have to explain what 10-page limit means because they want to write and write and write. But nonetheless, let's move on now to the Department of Homeland Security. Jolie, same question.
So for us, I think there's a lot of confusion, not necessarily contracting versus grant wise, but looking at DoD versus DHS. A lot of the DHS contracts are smaller. We are a smaller agency, so they are 150K. We do a 5-month phase one. We don't have an option period, which I know is something that people do kind of have in the DoD contracts. So I think there's some confusion there. So keeping in mind that it is a 5-month and making sure that they stick within that 5-month 150K is probably one of the most important things to kind of look out for there.
How about Sarah with AFRL?
So I'm going to go back to something that Brian said. Basically, when I talk to a lot of people, think about different sectors. Don't just focus on DoD as a whole or Air Force as a whole. Also think about when we're evaluating your technology, for example, your proposed work. We're also thinking about how can we apply this to the commercial market. So a lot of times, if you come with a solution, think of the solution for a long-term solution, not just. Of course, we're looking for an answer to the topic, but we're also thinking advanced. Of phase one, it's going to lead to a phase two. A phase two is going to lead to a phase three. So think ahead of what your proposal has to say for phase one, because the whole point of SBIRs and STTRs is that we can make this commercially available. And so my advice to you as you're writing your proposal is find a path or a way that you can link yourself already to a commercial solution. And that is actually something that as we're looking at our evaluations, even though it's just phase one, we're really looking, is there value to this? Is this actually something that's feasible for the future? So that would definitely be my advice to that is think long-term, not just short-term on your proposal.
Thank you. Genevieve, how about the NOAA approach to this?
Sure, absolutely. I think I'll start by just reiterating a point that a few other people have made that make sure you look at all the agencies when you're considering a specific topic. I think people often see NOAA, National Oceanic, and they stop reading there and think that we only talk about and cover ocean-related topics. But there are a lot of other things that we talk about and look into at NOAA. Additionally, I think in terms of the application process, because we have grants, all of our application submission and the whole process does go through grants.gov. And so I think that's one important difference between grants and contracts is where you're going to apply. And so with ours, it's at grants.gov. Also, because we have grants, we use external peer reviewers from a variety of relevant backgrounds to evaluate applications and make selections. And so it can be helpful to keep that in mind when you're going through the application process to understand who the audience is that you're writing your proposal for, which can vary whether an agency has contracts or grants. And then I think I'll also say that with our broad topics, we are ultimately looking for innovator ideas and their innovator plans to execute those ideas. So similarly to what Brian was saying, the technical content portion of your proposal ends up defining the scope of your project and ultimately becomes the work plan for the effort. So it's important to keep that in mind as you're navigating the application process and writing your proposal.
Great, thank you. And finally, on this particular topic,
Can I add one last comment real fast?
Yeah, sure, Brian.
I think it's funny, we all talked around it, but none of us actually said it. We all have really specific instructions that accompany our topics. And it is so important for all the people proposing that you really read and understand those instructions and follow it to the letter of the law. And then, of course, on the other end, leave yourself time to submit. Because the SBIR program, by and large, is a really competitive program. And when you have hundreds of firms submitting within hours of our solicitations closing, it's harder to get help from the help desks when you think you need it. So submit early and you'll be good to go, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's an area that I have found that as a PTAC advisor, I've been able to help people with, because some of the things that, those little details that are in the instructions, they just don't think those are relevant at the time when they're trying to get this proposal out the door. So one final panelist for this topic, and that would be Miss Nicole from the Army.
Well, thank you, Stephen. And Brian, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to just say that. So, yes, absolutely follow those instructions. And that's probably one of the biggest failures that we see. We've had to actually turn away proposals because they don't follow the BAA. Simple instructions can be missed so easily. So, just always make sure that you read the correct BAA that you're submitting your specific topic under. And again, BAAs change. So just because you send it in a month ago, it could have had an update, and page limits could change, who you're submitting it to, what the time that's supposed to be due. So definitely just pay attention to that. And another thing that I have given advice to over the years is making sure that you have someone else read your proposal who's not necessarily within your company, just to read through it. Have your wife look at it, have your uncle read through it, because sometimes you could miss some big important piece that you just thought you were saying over and over, and it just was not spelled out correctly for someone to just understand a certain piece of it. So just having that, or having the SBDC look over your proposal, is another great way to making sure that you are performing all those steps necessary to make sure that you're submitting the best proposal that you absolutely can, because we don't want you to miss out. As well as data assertions, we've had quite a few small businesses who forget to include that. But again, that's something that can be picked up with contracting later. So if it's something that you're looking to do, again, when you're going through your contracting or granting office, they can assist you in that. And we have a lot of folks who are just like, well, I've never done a contract before, I don't know what to do next. We have folks who are standing by to be able to assist you through those steps. So just reach out and ask questions. They know a lot of you are first timers, and it's okay to be a first timer. They're there to assist and help you through that process. So just make sure you reach out and ask those questions once you're selected for an award.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, our next question, we're going to start off with Brian with the U.S. Navy, and this has to do with awards. Brian, once an award is made, what does that look like to the awardee? And how does your agency handle that, and how might it differ from others, if you can comment on that?
Sure. So we're going to issue you first, we issue select, non-select notices to all of our proposers. So you're going to know whether you were selected or not. We also post our selections at navysbir.com. So you'll know, maybe even before the letters are issued, that you've been selected at navysbir.com. And we typically make 3 phase 1 awards for every phase 1 topic. And if you're selected, once you're selected, you're going to be notified by our contracting officer, and they're going to start working with you on any documentation they need for the contracts, in particular the certification representations, all your certifications that you're a small business, and all the things that they're going to need, the contracting officer is going to need to get the contract in place. In phase 1, we award firm fixed price contracts, which means the price you bid, that's the fixed price for the effort for the period of time, both the base and the option. And your first deliverable is going to be due within 15 days of contract award. That first deliverable is going to be a meeting with the TPOC, where you're going to talk about the effort, the way forward, what your plan is to do the research that you've proposed. And it'll be that time where you can start to develop the relationship with the TPOC, get to know him, get to understand his interests, his needs, how often he wants communication from you. And then you're going to be performing to the contract requirements. You're going to get the notification of the award, and actually the contract will be signed probably 2 to 3 weeks before the start date. So you'll be able to see the contract and understand it before it actually starts. And then at the kickoff, you can ask questions if you have any questions. And because we're going to want you to do research specific to the topic, there's going to be deliverable requirements during the Phase 1 award. So the first deliverable is due at day 15. It's the kickoff briefing materials, but then you're going to have progress reports due, and you're going to be working the whole time to meet a final report requirement at the end of the contract. That final report is going to be how you proved feasibility of what you proposed for the topic.
Thank you. Let's move next to Jolie from the Department of Homeland Security.
Ours is very similar to what Brian just kind of went through. The one place that we differ is we do have a group post-award meeting where we bring all the Phase 1 awardees together. During that meeting, we discuss contracts, export controls, fraud, waste, and abuse, Phase 2 information, try to give as many of the kind of cover the frequently asked questions that a lot of, especially like new awardees, may be asking. It also gives them an opportunity to talk to the stakeholders from DHS and ask any other questions that they may have that may come up while we're having those discussions. So I think that's really good to kind of, especially for the new awardees that haven't had an SBIR before or haven't had a DHS award before, to kind of learn those differences and nuances that we may have within DHS that don't necessarily apply to other agencies if they're used to having, say, a DoD contract. I think that's one of the biggest things. Again, it's a firm fixed price for Phase 1. It is a 5-month contract. There are monthly deliverables, and then the final report, the feasibility study, is due at the end.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Next, let's go to Sarah from Air Force Research Lab.
Hi. Yes, so very similar to Brian and Julia, I love your idea of you having a large kickoff meeting. We tend to do more individual kickoff meeting where we introduce who your technical point of contacts are, who your contracting officer is, who the contracting specialist is. We also introduce resources that you may have as well during the period of performance for us. We go over all the deliverables, we go over any terms and conditions. We don't read all the terms and conditions, but we do give people the opportunity to ask if there's something in the contract or the agreement that they don't understand. We do make sure that they feel heard, that they understand that we're here to answer questions for them. Just like everybody else, a lot of our Phase 1s are firm fixed price, so we explain to that how that works. As well, if there's any questions, it's pretty simple for them. But we do try to customize our kickoff meetings to each agreement, and we try to make sure we have everyone that's going to be present during the life of the programs to be there for that. Establishing their point of contacts, I think it's one of those, that relationship building that we try to emphasize from day one.
Great, thank you. Genevieve, would you like to jump in and tell us a little bit about how these awards are handled with NOAA?
Sure, absolutely. So similarly, we do send notifications of award to all our awardees. We also send review comments to everyone that went through the process, whether they were awarded or not, and that can be really valuable. We do allow resubmissions, though we don't have a formal resubmission process, but taking those reviewer comments and making your proposal better for next time is a great way to get an award. After you accept the award and the period of performance has started, the small business will gain access to the funds. We do have a virtual kickoff meeting, and we go over all of the rules and requirements. One note, so with grants, the deliverable are often reports rather than the technology themselves. So we're looking at our interim and our final reports as the deliverables for these projects. Another important difference between grants and contracts in terms of the execution of the award is the rules that regulate them are different. Contracts are regulated by the Federal Acquisition Regulations or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations, whereas grants are regulated by the Office of Management and budget guidance, and then agency terms and conditions. Because we work in a space that has some overlap with some of the contracting agencies, and because we previously used contracts and now we're using grants, we sometimes get companies saying, well, FAR says this, FAR says we can do this, we can do that. And we have to remind them that the grants have a different set of rules and requirements, so they're not administered under the same rules. Another difference between grants and contracts can be in terms of how the money is handled. So with contracts, you often have to submit invoices and then you get reimbursed. But with our grants, you are able to draw down funds in advance. One thing that is different sometimes with NOAA versus the other granting agencies is that Department of Commerce terms and conditions requires our awardees to minimize the amount of cash that they have on hand, which means that they shouldn't have more than $5,000 sitting around unspent for more than 30 days. So those are some of the important differences between the contracting agencies and NOAA, and then also between some of the other granting agencies and how NOAA manages our awards.
Thank you very much, Genevieve. Nicole, could you give us the Army perspective on this same topic?
Absolutely. We're very similar to how Brian, Jolie, and Sarah had already has discussed, but I just wanted to go a little bit deeper. Um, Once you have received that phase one contract or even phase two contract, is making sure that you're registered for at least the Army and wide area workflow. That's where you get your funding from. So making sure that you take the training, getting through that. It can be the first time through can be a little difficult, but it is user friendly. Once you have help with the help desk, they're always there to support you, as well as working with your core, your contracting officer representative, and or your TPOC, your technical point of contact. They'll be able to assist you with that as well. Wide area workflow, most of the small businesses I work with, it's usually once you submit that invoice, it's been approved. It's 30 days before you receive that first payment. And a lot of folks think it's immediately I'm going to get that payment in my bank account, but just be prepared. It's normally 30 days, especially for your first one, because it has to go through a process of review and approvals. So just to be, being prepared for that and knowing that that's a possibility to come through. Another thing I don't believe that was mentioned was CDRLs. That's another thing that we call for those milestones that are due monthly in most cases, sometimes bi-monthly. That is either measured by a technical report or some type of milestone event meetings. And those are different per contract, and those are set up based on however the proposal was written. So those things, again, will be discussed with your contracting officer during the negotiation part, but just wanted to mention that as well.
Wonderful. That wide area workflow is another one of those topics that people come to us at PTAC for assistance with from time to time. Generally speaking, though, once we help them get set up and understand how the system works a little bit, we don't hear from them again. So it seems to work pretty well. It's just that initial getting set up to get that first invoice in seems to be the difficulty. Tammy, are you still with us here? From my perspective, you keep fading in and out. So hopefully you'll be able to tackle that same question as well.
I do keep having some technology issues, and I apologize. Um, our I'll quickly kind of summarize. We at USDA, our SBIR awards are 8 months in length, and our STTR awards will be.
I believe we lost Tammy. It looks like her connection is really low. So we'll see if she can respond back once she gets back, Steve. So
Okay.
you might want to skip over.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. And this one, we're going to start off with Jolie from Department of Homeland Security. And we're going to get into a little bit different topic here, talking about the transition between phase one and phase two programs. And this can be quite different between grants and contracts, or even between different agencies. So what is something that you think can be a hurdle for how your agency approaches this transition point?
So I think one of the big things to keep in mind with
A peer
DHS
review
is that
panel.
there is no option funding.
So they will get
A
reviewer
lot of
comments, and they
the-
will
like,
get
a lot of the DoD
panel.
Go ahead, Jolie.
A lot of the
I'm
DoD
not sure
agencies
if
I
you
know
caught any of that at all.
have some options between, so that helps with that that funding between your phase one and your phase two. That's not something we offer. We do reach out to companies about 2 weeks before their phase one ends, to have them start working on and submitting their phase two proposal. So those are due
We're having some
just a
serious
couple weeks
technical issues
after
here. Looks
the
like
end
with
of the
people coming and
phase
going.
one. That's due. Those are due at the end, a couple weeks after the end of the phase one. So we do try to minimize that time without funding. And I know for some of the smaller businesses that are just 1 to 2 people, that can be a big difference for them.
Sorry, folks. They
But
said I
that's
got dropped. I'm gonna try and work on my internet connection and come back to you guys.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
that's probably one of the biggest differences, though, that can be there. And I do want to as well put in my shameless plug for the fact that we do have a solicitation currently. Pre-solicitation is currently open, and we do have the solicitation opens tomorrow. So please go out to sbir.dhs.gov and look at those and see if there's anything that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you, Jolie. Sarah, let's move to you. Your connection looks pretty stable. Can you talk a little bit about the transition and hurdles that your agency, your client customers might encounter with your agency?
Yes. So being that we do a lot of research and development, and sometimes we begin with an idea, ensuring that is the idea going to be something that is valued by the customer. So we work a lot with the customer to make sure the customer feels that we can transition to a phase two. Of course, we are a federally funded agency, so we have to ensure that we have the funds available. So as you are progressing, as you're evaluating the technology, we do ask our program managers to start thinking about, can we have funds? Can we request funds? So again, that very forward thinking about, we take our phase one with the hope that there will be a phase two and then eventually a phase three. So working with the customer, working with the contractors or the universities, and ensuring that we are having a positive result of those phase ones so we can transition them to a phase two.
Okay, thank you. Genevieve, how about Noah on that topic?
Sure. So for our transition from phase one to phase two, phase one awardees go through a similar application process as they do at phase one, with the addition of the required commercialization plan. This allows us to put these applications through the same scientific review process that phase one proposals go through as they move between the two phases. I think one hurdle that this does create is that there is then a gap in funding between phase one and phase two of about 6 months. We're always working to try to minimize the amount of time that companies are without funding. But we also are balancing with that with the importance of having that checkpoint to evaluate the progress, and at phase two especially, to make sure that companies have an understanding of not just the scientific and technical aspects of the project, but of the commercialization components as well.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, would you like to address that from the Army perspective?
Absolutely. Very similar to what's already been described is transitioning from that phase one to phase two. There is no option funding within the Army program, at least on the applied SBIR side of that. It is based on your regular submission, how well you've completed, and you were able to go through your feasibility study and making sure that you reach those goals and milestones that you put forth in that original contract. Again, another proposal will be submitted for your phase two. That'll go through another evaluation process, and based on funding availability as well as on technical feasibility, if it will be selected or not for your phase two. And a lot that is looked at phase two versus your phase one is that commercialization aspect of it. How are you going to be transitioning to the next step? Where within the Army is it going to be utilized, as well as where that other commercial sector might be? Will the police department use that? Will we have some of our school systems be able to utilize it? So always having that in the back of your mind and making sure that you have your marketing strategy completed, as well as knowing and connecting through folks within the Army to make sure that you have the ability to continue with your program and your project to be able to have that widget completed in phase 2 to be able to do that demonstration phase.
All right, thank you. Tammy, it looks like you're back with us. I'm going to give you a shot at this question. I don't know if you heard it, but we're talking about the transition between phase 1 and phase 2, and in particular, any hurdles that your clients might run into in this transition process specific to your agency.
Thank you, Steve, for repeating the question. I thought I might know where we were at, but I wasn't certain. And thank you for their patience with my connection issues. Um, so for USDA, only our phase 1 applicants are eligible to apply for phase 2, like many of the other agencies. Um, we do not have a direct to phase 2 option. We have a separate application for the phase 2 awards. So applicants will apply for phase 2 or phase 1, and if successful and awarded, then after the completion of phase 1, they will be eligible to apply for phase 2. They don't necessarily have to have the entire phase 1 award complete, but they need to be at a status that they can step forward and talk more about a commercialization plan within their phase 2 application, because that phase 2 application is much more dependent upon the commercialization plan. Um, One thing that I think could be a hurdle for our applicants is that um, we only have one chance for our phase 1 awardees to apply for phase 2. And so if they're not ready to apply, it's currently set up so that when you're awarded a phase 1, we have an 8-month SBIR award. And within like 9 or 10 months after the initiation of their phase 1 application, the phase 2 application is available and open for them. However, if they're not ready to apply, we really recommend that they wait a year. Um, and make sure that they're at a place where they can work on and communicate their commercialization plan to the peer review panel. If they're not ready, and they apply too early and they don't get selected for funding, there's not another opportunity. They have to go back to phase 1 and start over with a new twist on their innovation, or perhaps they had problems with their technical feasibility in phase 1, and they may go back and do a second phase 1 before they apply for phase 2. But I think that only having that one chance at that phase 2 application, I really can't encourage enough to for the applicants and the awardees to make sure that they're ready to apply.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to stay with the flow of this particular topic. We're going to move on to Brian, and then Tammy. We'll come back to you for that previous question and let you restate your answer, because it pretty much got broken up. Brian, I'm going to go over to you now with the question on the transition between phase 1 and phase 2.
Thanks, Dave. It's funny listening to all of us. It's fascinating how different we can be and how similar we are. But at Navy, because our topics are very focused and aligned to our programs, there is a transition built into the topic. So when you're working your phase 1, you will very clearly know where your transition point is. We want you to understand the broader market, the broader private sector market, the market outside of defense as well, and you need to build that into your proposal for phase 2. But by and large, you're going to understand who you're transitioning to and who you're working toward in phase 2 when you're with the Navy, because of the way our topics are structured. They all have sponsors, and you're aligning your work to those sponsors' needs. Likewise, if we're putting out a phase 1 topic, we've set aside the budget for the phase 1 awards and the phase 2 award. I very rarely see a phase. We always award a phase 2, or almost always award a phase 2 when we have a phase 1 topic. So if you're in a phase 1, someone's going to get a phase 2 unless everyone has fallen flat or the research hasn't gone anywhere and they're doing something different. But I think some of the stumbling blocks are, first of all, like many of us, there's an application process to phase 2. And if you don't do that correctly, you sometimes don't get a second chance. Federal law has required that phase two is competitive. So we have to have competitive requirements in place for phase two. And if you don't meet those competitive requirements, there's no do-over. It's kind of like phase one. At least at DoD, we don't let you fix and resubmit your phase one proposal. Likewise, at least at Navy, we don't let you fix and resubmit your phase two proposal. Because in phase two, you're competing with all the awardees who were on the phase one topic with you. So that's sometimes 2, 3 other companies. So it needs to be a competition. If you're selected for phase two, we want you to have an approved accounting system. And that's sometimes a stumbling block. It's not an absolute requirement, but in phase two, we issue cost plus fixed fee contracts. And to get a cost plus fixed fee award, you need to have an accounting system that's been reviewed and approved by DCAA. So you can start that process in phase one, or you can actually start it once you get your selection letter for phase two, and it can usually be done by the time you get the phase two award. At Navy, we do options in our phase one. So your phase one base that you worked for 6 months, then you submit your phase two proposal at the end of the phase one. And if you're selected for phase two, we're going to exercise your option, and you're going to have another 6 months worth of work while we're preparing and awarding your phase two contract. So that's how we bridge then the gap, the funding gap.
Okay, thank you. I think everybody got a chance now to talk about the transition. So I want to go back to Tammy just briefly in USDA about the award and how that looks to the awardee and how it might be different from other agencies.
Sure. Thanks for hopping back to question the previous question for me. I kind of heard from some of the other panelists that you know applicants will receive comments back from their application regardless of whether or not they were selected for funding, and that's not different with USDA. We do however run a peer review panel, which not all agencies do, and so our applicants will receive both the reviewer comments as well as a panel summary, which kind of summarizes the main talking points from the panel deliberations. After being selected for an award, our SBIR awardees have an 8th-month award, and our STTR awardees will have a 12-month award. The reporting responsibilities for these two programs are going to be the same. Both will have interim and final reports due. So just 2 reports for each award, regardless of phase one or phase two. Our phase two awards for both programs are going to be a 24-month award. One thing that I did not catch from the other discussions was the option of extending their awards, and I wanted to bring up that for USDA, it is rather simple for our awardees to request and receive a first time no cost extension up to 12 months. Subsequent or longer no cost extensions do require some more documentation and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to just indicate that those first requests up to the 12-month mark are fairly easy to obtain.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to our next question. We're going to start off with Sarah from AFRL on this one. After a phase two, where else can awardees go with your agency? Are there supplemental programs or companion opportunities that they should be aware of?
Yes, so I'm very excited about this question actually, because a lot of times we work with establishing CRADAs, so cooperative research agreements. These are not funded, but it gives, again, the opportunity for the businesses to continue to work or test their science. So we also have material testing agreements. Those are also not funded, but again, they give them access to still continue to develop their research with us. So we do have a large portfolio of opportunities that they can look at and still continue to do the work and the research and develop their science or their technology involved. And those are very easy to put together. We have a team of individuals that can work with the companies and work with our scientists or engineers to put the right, correct type of agreements they need. We have, again, CRADAs, EPAs for universities. We have if you want to test some of your software as well, we have information testing agreements. So there is a lot of work that we can continue to do with the recipients or the contractors, and not just try phase one or phase two. And we really want to make sure that they continue to work their programs or their projects.
Okay, thank you very much. And trying to keep my rotation straight here, I think we'll move to Genevieve next with NOAA.
Yeah, for sure. So NOAA is one of the agencies that has a smaller SBIR budget. We have about 14 million in our phase one and phase two bucket in fiscal year 23. So we don't have any of the like sequential phase two awards or other opportunities built into the SBIR program for further funding. I will point out the phase three sole source contracts from NOAA or other agencies can be an opportunity to get further resources, even to just support more research and development. So that's always an opportunity for any SBIR funded company to explore. But the important thing about phase three is that that funding comes from sources outside of the SBIR budget and really requires relationship building starting very early on in the project for that to be a successful approach to supporting the work. I'll also add that there are a number of other programs in NOAA that support similar types of research, and those are usually technical area focused. And small businesses are certainly eligible to apply for those opportunities as they are available.
Great, thank you. Nicole, over to you. And what does the Army think about this?
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yes, for our transition part of the program, there are actually several different opportunities that come up. So once that phase two is completed, actually probably in the second year of your phase two, is to start looking into your sequential, which is your second phase two. And that is the same dollar value, same award criteria, basically the same thing, but it's just to give you a plus up into moving your potential prototype into off the shelf, or potentially into a program executive office, which is our ultimate goal of the Applied Cyber program, to make sure that we can have that funding go into a program of record and be able to have that widget that you're working on be put in the hands of our soldiers. So another couple of things that we have that are available is we currently have the AppFit program as well as Catalyst. They're both just started. More information will be coming out on those particular programs in the weeks and months ahead. So please keep an eye out for those. Just wanted to give a little teaser out there and let you know that they're coming, which the dollar value of the cyber portion of that are going to be quite a bit more than what we've previously seen. So that way it can definitely jumpstart your particular project into that phase three, where we're trying to have a self-sustained small business company that can be able to sell directly to the government, or potentially even be able to have a prime that they're able to work with and be able to continue with the prototype and have it into something that is self-sustaining within that particular company. So definitely lots of opportunities for phase three out there, and we don't like to push back on the small business, but again, once you start seeing progress in your phase two, keep pushing and keep looking for those marketing advantages and contacts within the Army to be able to keep your project running, and keeping in touch with those program executive offices to make sure that you're following the specific needs that are going on currently with the Army.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Tammy, you're still with us. That's good. You're looking strong. So could you maybe address a little bit about how USDA, what kind of opportunities, companion opportunities, and other directions awardees might take with USDA?
Sure, Steve. Um, USDA situation is very similar to what Genevieve described for NOAA. We are one of the smaller SBIR programs with a smaller budget, and therefore we don't have a formal follow-on program for um, after phase two. We did just this fall have an opportunity where a very select um, requirement came forward through the broader USDA and out of this secretary's office, that we were able to direct an RFA to a select set of applicants with a very specific topic area. And we may facilitate something like that and treat it like a phase 3 award. But it is something that does occur on a very rare occurrence. Um, Similar to what Sarah indicated, we do also work with CRADAs and along with the ARS, or Agricultural Research Service branch of USDA, which could provide those opportunities and those avenues for applicants if they have developed those relationships well in advance to use those resources and develop those resources early on during their SBIR tenure for future moving forward with those angel investors, those venture capitalists, for finding those funding resources when they have, for lack of a better term, for when they've graduated from the USDA SBIR or STTR programs.
All right, thank you. Brian, over to you and the Navy perspective.
So, I think it's important to remember that we are a contracting command, like Nicole. So we are ultimately the buyer of what you're doing. So you should be positioning yourself and marketing yourself and doing your business development from phase 1 all the way through phase 2. And that starts with your technical point of contact who's running your project. That person should be pulling the project to them. They are your champion, and they should be arming you with information, with contacts, with references who you can contact in the broader picture to find opportunities for your technology. At the same time, you're working toward meeting their needs, but please utilize them, their expertise, their network, any information that they'll give you for the bigger picture to help understand where you can take what you're doing. And that includes outside the defense market. I usually tell people, small businesses also, that most of our buying commands, so the Navy has 8 system commands, they're called buying commands. They have open BAAs for their buying command. So let's say one of the buying commands is NAVC, everything ships and submarines and stuff. They have an open BAA completely separate from the SBIR program, where they put out needs to industry, large and small, and you can submit to those general needs with your ideas, your technology, things you want to do for them. So many of our buying commands, and I would imagine that many of the agencies on this call have similar open solicitations for their entire agency that you should look into and you should try to find. So that's a huge opportunity. I'll also say that the Federal Labs Consortium I was just looking it up, federallabs.org is a way that small businesses can connect to work that's being done in the Navy's warfare centers and align what they're doing to those warfare center needs and apply for contracts and grants with those warfare centers, likely contracts. But federallabs.org is a great place to find opportunities as well.
And Stephen, I do have one go back. Actually,
Brian, go ahead.
You reminded me of something. Actually, we actually have a website that we always refer people to. If you have an idea, you can submit your idea there. Your TPOC might only know so many people, but at least it's a starting point. However, through the Air Force Connect website, you can actually submit your idea, and that idea gets sent out to several different people. So that's, many entities have a platform very similar to this. If your entity has a platform similar to this, take advantage of that, because there's multiple people looking at your ideas and can have contact with you and reach out to you directly. So definitely take advantage of those things. And ours is Air Force Technology, airforcetechconnect.org. So putting a pitch for that.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. Just to wrap up this particular question, I think Jolie from Department of Homeland Security is the only person we haven't heard from.
Okay, I will try to be quick. As I said earlier, all of our topics, when they go out in the solicitation, do have an end user in mind. Things that we do within the SBIR office to help with that transition is we do have a CRPP program, which is 250 up to 250K and a 12 months to kind of help with testing and evaluation. We do a matching funds program as well. That's not utilized very often, and on occasion we can do a second phase two. We are again very similarly to some of the others on the panel, a smaller agency. We don't have a whole lot of funding, but we do try to help out with that. And some of our program managers are amazing and utilize their SBIRs to their full advantage. Our Screening at Speed program, he has I want to say 4 or 5 different phase 3 projects that he's done. Some of it's R&D, some of it's actually in the acquisition, world, but he's great at utilizing the SBIRs that he puts topics out there for. Some of the other ones are as well. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities within, DHS, S&T, and in the community to get to that phase 3. And I think a lot of our topic managers are great about making sure that the projects that they're working on are getting there.
All right. I've got one more question here, and we're going to start off with Genevieve from NOAA on this one. This is about phase 3, which is all about commercialization of the technology. So I know this may not apply to everyone, but how do you approach phase 3, and what should an applicant or an awardee understand about the differences between a grant and a contract in this particular aspect?
Sure, absolutely. I think when I use the phrase phase 3, I'm talking broadly about commercialization and not just acquisition from the federal agency perspective. One thing that we do is similarly to the other agencies, we offer a commercialization assistance program for our phase 2 awardees, which provides some mentoring and training and includes one-on-one engagement with industry-specific business consultants to help people understand that component of their projects. We're actively working on building additional mechanisms and opportunities to support the commercialization of our NOAA SBIR funded technologies. In general, we're looking for technologies that have commercial potential beyond NOAA as a customer. So our efforts to support commercialization are going to focus on helping awardees build relationships with a variety of potential investors and customers, both within and outside of the government. This is kind of a growing area of effort within the NOAA SBIR program. So overall, I would just say stay tuned for some more opportunities in this space coming soon.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, would you like to address that topic?
Absolutely. So, yeah, for our particular phase 3s, we don't actually award those phase 3 contracts within our contracting center of excellence, but they are actually done through program executive offices. So, as Genevieve was mentioning, we assist those small businesses in locating their program executive office that they should be working with. They should have developed their relationship within their phase 1 and phase 2. And we have, as some have mentioned earlier, we have technical assistance information that's available through FedTech to assist our small businesses to be able to have the resources needed to be able to work through their phase 3s and to be able to find those contracts. Because basically, a phase 3, at least under Army standards, is any funding that is outside or not earmarked underneath the SBIR program. So it can be outside investors, it can be a prime, it can be through a program executive office, it can be through DARPA, any of the other places that have additional funding that can be able to put on a specific contract to be able to extend the life cycle of that particular award.
Okay. Tammy?
Sure. Thank you, Steve. I think similar to Genevieve, the budget at USDA is on the smaller side, and so we haven't, as I said earlier, had a lot of phase 3 commercialization funded events, within USDA. However, we are, like I said, we did have this opportunity this last fall for a few applicants to be able to apply to a phase 3 award. We have also, similar to what Genevieve said, we've started exploring other branches within USDA and looking at their interest in potentially working to provide some phase 3 funding through the different institutions or agencies or branches within USDA. Perhaps there might be an avenue through like Forest Service or through rural and community development or the NRCS. These are avenues that we're exploring and looking into, but that we don't have set up or concrete yet.
Okay, thank you. Brian, would you like to address that for the Navy?
Sure. So Navy has several transition programs that we use to help firms transition from phase 2 to phase 3. Our longest running transition program is our STP program, SBIR STTR transition program. It's been around for 22 years, and it's a 11-month program where we actually assign business consultants to our phase 2 awardees, and they work with you through an 11-month period to mentor you, to train you, to help you develop materials, to help identify opportunities for you. And we also, a big part of that program is that we take you to events to meet technical people, to be able to give tech talks outside of our industry, to help you understand the markets and further advance your technology and get it out there. We also have a program called Navy Launch, which is designed specifically to help position companies to transition outside of the defense space, so in truly private sector. That's a 10-month program that phase 2 firms are eligible for. We also have an experimentation group that works with our phase 2 awardees to get them into experiments so they can demonstrate their technology in labs, on ships, in program offices, and that helps people understand what's required to transition and helps people transition. And I think most importantly, we have transition agents in our system commands, in our SBIR offices embedded in our system commands. And those transition agents are there to help be your advocate and help you find the resources and find the opportunities and sometimes do the phase 3 paperwork for you, helping you develop those phase 3 packages to submit to contracting offices. Our Contracting Center of Excellence does quite a number of phase 3 contracts, but any Navy contracting office can do a phase 3 contract, and GSA also awards quite a few phase 3 contracts. So there's plenty of contracting opportunities for phase 3, and Navy has plenty of programs to help you get you there.
Thank you. That's a good point about GSA. I'd forgotten about that. Okay, Jolie, would you like to address this topic as it relates to Homeland Security?
Absolutely. So I'll follow on with Brian. Ours is called CAM, which is the Commercialization Assistance Marketplace. That's what we use to help the phase 2 companies with their transition. They do needs assessment. They do current detailed market information to fill the gaps. One thing that we do differently is we do have what we call a showcase. So for each of the components, there's a showcase that has their SBIR technologies in it, and feds are invited to those to be able to kind of see what technologies we have and if they have an interest in it. The other thing that we have is we have portfolio managers that are kind of the connection between the Science and Technology Office and the components, and they become the champion for those. They help with our topics, but they also become the champion for some of those topics when it comes to getting them into the component and understanding what the component needs are and how to kind of get those SBIRs in the right position to be able to be transitioned into the components that they were initially put out for.
Okay. I think we're down to our last speaker for this topic, and that would be Sarah from Air Force Research Lab.
So we always encourage the companies and small businesses to, of course, work with their TPOCs. Their TPOCs know where the technology is going. With their TPOCs or their program managers, we always encourage them to start thinking ahead. Again, start thinking of the money and the funding, because it's not, of course, SBIR or STTR specific. We have to find our own money. So if the technology and the science is proven, encourage those PMs, those TPOCs to secure funding. We do have a program called AFWorks as well that really works with transitioning phase 1 and phase 2 to phase 3s. So we try to provide as many resources as possible to the small businesses. And again, we always do encourage as well to think of other sectors. Maybe there's a different sector that can apply that technology to become commercially available. We do, of course, have several solicitations that are open. Those are called ARAs. So we do have acquisitions that are advanced research announcements, and that could be a possibility for them to continue into those phase 3 developments.
All right, thank you very much. Del, that concludes this part of the roundtable. Do you have some questions from the audience that you want to bring up?
Yes, Steve, I actually do. There were a couple of questions that got dropped in. One question, actually, yeah, two questions that were directed towards you, Brian. One of the questions was you had talked very briefly, very minor mention about like a Navy open topic in 2023. Could you give a little bit more information about that?
Just that we're going to have one, and we're likely going to frame it to particular technology areas. We haven't decided on what technology areas. Air Force has done a great job, I guess specifically AFWorks has done a great job at introducing the world to the concept of an open topic. And I think Navy is going to take that same construct but try to define some swim lanes a little bit so that when we collect good ideas for that open topic, they're already kind of binned in technical areas so that we can align them to evaluators and get them processed quickly. Because while Congress has asked everyone to do open topics, they didn't give us any leeway on our notification requirements or our award timelines. So we have to keep an agile, fast process.
Great. And the other question I'd like to address, because I think it is important, we are pretty much at time, but I would like everybody to kind of just take one stab at this, because this came in, we see it a lot, and the support that we offer for businesses. But when somebody submits an SBIR or other grant to a government agency, if the technology is highly classified or is going to be highly classified, what do they need to be aware of? Are there any special controls they need to, issue? People always worry about that, and is it really a worry they should have?
I'd say yes. I'll jump right in. So, at least for DoD, no one should ever submit any classified information in a proposal. Our systems are not capable of securing information that's not just confidential to the company. So please don't ever submit anything, any classified information into any of our systems, either for phase 1 or phase 2. And I think I can also say in a blanket way for DoD that we won't do classified work in phase 1 because classifying work is a limiting factor for small business, and we don't want to limit anybody in any way. So none of us are doing classified work in phase 1. We want everyone to participate. What we might say in the topic, and you guys, DoD, can correct me, what we might say in the topic is that in phase 2, it's gonna move to classified, or we're gonna have to provide you classified information for you to continue if you go to phase 2. And then we're gonna work with you in phase 1 to make sure you're set up to do that in phase 2 then, because you have to have facility clearances, security clearances possibly, and we wanna set you up for success. So we will do everything we can to help you, and we're gonna warn you ahead of time in the phase 1 topic if that's where it's going in phase 2. But please don't submit anything classified to any of our systems.
Real quickly, does anybody else want to address that, or did Brian kind of encapsulate it for everyone?
I think Brian captured DHS. We don't accept any classified phase 1 or phase 2. In the 3 years that I've been at DHS, I have not seen anything go classified, which I can say that that was different when I was in DoD, but
Alrighty. Well, we will go ahead and turn it over to Garrett now. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Steve, and all the panelists for that awesome roundtable on the differences between granting and contracting agencies, and for all of our participants and the agencies you represent. We hope that was informative and lets you chart a better pathway for your business as you move through the SBIR and STTR programs. Now, we are going to take a quick final break to set up for our last panel of the day. So please explore the expo hall, check out the breakout rooms, or network with other attendees. We'll be back at around 3:40 p.m.